My mom threw me out so she could play happy family with her new husband. Years later, when she found out I'd become successful, she came back, demanding that I pay for her stepkids' education with the money I earned on my own. My mother had me when she was only 20. She used to tell me that my biological father never wanted children, that when she got pregnant after only a few months of dating, she gave him the choice to stay or leave. He chose the latter, disappearing from our lives without hesitation. According to her, their breakup was bitter enough that she refused to pursue child support, and he made no effort to offer any. They cut ties completely, and honestly, I think both found it easier that way. Thankfully, my grandparents were her lifeline. They helped her finish school, find work, and raise me while she rebuilt her life. For the first few years, it was just us, my mom and me, and I thought we were doing fine. She dated a few men here and there, but nothing serious until she met Harry, one of her co-workers, when I was about 8. They dated for 3 years before getting married. Harry and I were never particularly close, but we managed to get along well enough. Things seemed fine for a while, until my mom got pregnant again. Twins this time, 4 years after their wedding. Everyone was thrilled, including me. I genuinely believed the babies would bring our family even closer. Looking back, I should have known better. I was too young, too hopeful, and too convinced that my mother would always be on my side. After she married Harry, I started noticing a distance between us. She wasn't as warm, not as patient. I brushed it off as temporary stress. But during her pregnancy, her attitude toward me changed completely. She seemed irritated by everything I did. I tried to stay out of her way, thinking that maybe she just needed space, but even my silence seemed to annoy her. 6 months after the twins were born, my mother and Harry sat me down for what they called a serious talk. I was 16. They told me that with 2 infants to care for, they simply couldn't afford to keep me in the house. They tried to make it sound reasonable: financial strain, limited resources, a growing family. But we'd been living comfortably before, and both of them worked as web engineers. Their excuses didn't make sense. It wasn't about money, it was about me. I tried to fight for my place in that home. I offered to get a part-time job, to contribute, but my mom looked at me coldly and said, "We need to save for the kids. They deserve it more." That word, deserve, cut deeper than anything she'd ever said. She didn't say they needed it more. She said they deserved it. That was when I knew I didn't belong anymore. They didn't technically throw me out, but they didn't have to. They knew I had enough pride not to stay where I wasn't wanted. So I packed my things and left. They didn't even tell me where I should go. I ended up at my grandparents' house. They were furious at my mother, though not enough to cut her off. They wanted to stay involved with the twins, and I couldn't blame them for that. At 16, I started working part-time because I didn't want to rely on my grandparents. They were getting older and deserved peace, not financial stress. Sometimes I'd see my mother and Harry when they visited with the twins. They treated me like a distant relative, polite but detached. Not once did they ask how I was doing. They seemed perfectly content without me, and oddly enough, my mother even seemed happier. That realization hurt more than being kicked out. When I graduated high school and prepared to go to college, I had to figure everything out on my own. My mother didn't help with applications, moving, or even a word of encouragement. My grandparents were too frail to travel, so I leaned on friends to get settled into my dorm. When I asked my mom for help with expenses, she and Harry refused, saying they were saving for the twins' future. So I took out student loans, and one of my uncles agreed to co-sign, but only after I promised he'd never have to pay a cent. I worked all through college, juggling classes and part-time jobs to stay afloat. I wanted to build a future that no one could take from me. When I graduated, my grandparents were the only family members who showed up. My mother didn't even call. After that, I decided I was done trying. Life after college wasn't easy. I lived frugally, scraping by on entry-level pay while slowly repaying my debts. But I never stopped pushing forward. Over time, I climbed the ladder at my company. Years of effort, sleepless nights, and self-reliance finally paid off. By my early 30s, I had worked my way into a senior management role at the same firm where I started. For the first time, I felt stable, proud even. I never advertised my success, but my uncle, the one who'd co-signed my loan, was one of the few people who knew about my recent promotion. He mentioned it at a family gathering, probably thinking my mom would be proud. Instead, she showed up at my doorstep for the first time in over a decade, Harry by her side, insisting she needed to talk. To be honest, I hadn't spoken to her since I left for college. I'd blocked her everywhere, erased her from my life, and never looked back. My grandparents respected that boundary, and my uncle and I had lost touch over time. So when my mother appeared on my doorstep, looking older, worn down, and oddly desperate, I had no idea what she wanted. The only reason I even let her inside was because a small part of me still hoped she'd come to apologize. When my mother and Harry sat down in my living room, their tone was strangely formal at first. They began by saying they'd heard about my promotion from my uncle, how I'd become one of the youngest people to reach such a senior position in my company. But instead of congratulating me, their expressions carried something closer to disbelief, as if my success was an inconvenience I'd hidden from them. They asked why I hadn't told them, why I'd shut them out. I almost laughed at the absurdity. These were the same people who had once shown me the door and told me their real children deserved more than I did. And now they were upset that I hadn't kept them updated on my accomplishments. They claimed that I'd misunderstood them back then, that they hadn't truly wanted me gone, but had merely reprioritized their lives around the twins. Apparently, 16-year-old me should have understood that, accepted it gracefully, and even supported their decision. They tried to twist the story, painting themselves as the victims of a selfish teenager who couldn't handle change. I could feel the old frustration rising inside me, the same helpless anger I'd felt when I was told to pack my bags all those years ago. Even now, after nearly 2 decades, they were trying to make me believe I'd been the problem. Then they got to the real reason for their visit. After some awkward small talk about how hard life had been lately, they admitted their business had failed. The company they'd started years ago hadn't survived, and they'd lost most of their savings. With the twins nearing college age, they were drowning in financial stress. That's when they said it. They wanted my help, or more specifically, my money. They said it as though they were offering me a gift, telling me I had a chance to make things right by paying for my half-siblings' college tuition. My mother even tried to soften the demand, calling it an opportunity to reconnect with the family. I was stunned, not just by the request, but by the tone of entitlement behind it. I told them, calmly at first, that I wouldn't be doing that. Their faces shifted instantly, from polite to offended. My mother's voice grew sharp as she reminded me of all the sacrifices she'd made when I was little, how she'd raised me alone before Harry came along. She said this was my time to give back. That was the moment I lost my composure. I reminded her that when I needed help, when I was the one scraping by in college, working nights, taking loans, she'd refused to help. I told her that she and Harry were the reason I had to struggle so hard in the first place. They'd made their choice. They'd made it clear which children deserved their support, and I wasn't going to let them rewrite history now that the roles were reversed. I told them plainly that they had no right to expect anything from me. Not money, not sympathy, not even a conversation. If saving money for their real children had been their priority, then they could use that same saved money now. My voice was shaking, but I didn't care. I was done being guilt-tripped by people who had only ever shown up when they needed something. They didn't take it well. My mother's face hardened, and Harry accused me of being cold and selfish. They claimed I was no better than them because I was turning my back on family. My mother threw in that old, familiar line about how she'd done her best as a young single mother and that I owed her for it. But I didn't owe her anything. I didn't ask to be born into her guilt or her choices. When I told them to leave, the argument turned ugly. Harry snapped that I was overreacting, and my mother called me ungrateful. She said she had come to me not for herself but for my siblings, that this was my chance to show some compassion. I told her that compassion goes both ways, and they'd shown me none when they forced me out as a teenager. If they didn't leave, I warned, I'd call the police. That finally did it. My mother stood up, muttered something about me being ungrateful, and stormed out with Harry trailing behind her. After they left, I sat in silence for a long time. The encounter kept replaying in my head. Every accusation, every attempt to twist the story. And even though I knew I'd done nothing wrong, a small part of me couldn't stop wondering if I'd been too harsh. It's strange how deep the roots of guilt can go, even when you've spent years cutting them away. Later, I reached out to my uncle, the one who'd unintentionally set this whole situation in motion by telling my mother about my promotion. He was mortified when he realized what had happened. He apologized repeatedly, saying he hadn't known they were struggling financially and that he never imagined they'd use the information to manipulate me. I told him I wasn't angry, just disappointed. He made a mistake, but his intentions had been good. And honestly, if it hadn't been for him co-signing my student loan years ago, I might never have made it through college at all. I couldn't hold that against him. I told him that I forgave him, but also made it clear that what he did, sharing my personal details without my consent, wasn't okay. He understood completely and promised to respect my boundaries moving forward. I also spoke with my grandparents about everything that had happened. They were heartbroken but said I'd done the right thing. They promised to talk to my mother, though I'm not holding my breath for a miracle. I think my mom still believes she's the victim in all of this. And maybe in her own mind, she always will. Still, I can't help but wonder, am I really wrong for refusing to pay for my half-sibling's college tuition? For standing my ground after all these years? Or am I just tired of being the only one expected to make sacrifices for a family that stopped treating me like one long ago? After everything that happened, I finally understood why my grandparents still kept in touch with my mother. They didn't want to lose contact with their other grandchildren. They've told me they sympathize with her struggles, but they also made it clear that what she's doing to me is wrong. They believe she's crossed a line, and I agree with them. First update, since our confrontation, my mother hasn't left me alone. It's been over a week now, and she's been sending me emails almost every other day. Long messages filled with guilt and manipulation, reminding me of everything she supposedly did for me while I was growing up. She acts like raising me was some noble act of charity instead of a basic responsibility she chose when she became a parent. The irony isn't lost on me. She only played the role of a mother when it suited her, and as soon as I became inconvenient, she discarded me for her new family. Now that the twins are grown, she's decided it's my turn to repay her sacrifices. For a while, I ignored the emails, but after the 5th or 6th message, I decided to respond, not to argue, but to finally say what needed to be said. I told her everything, how her actions affected me, how she made me feel disposable, and how I'd had to build a life on my own because she chose to push me away. As expected, she didn't take it well. She called me ungrateful, again, and accused me of rewriting history. I told her that name-calling wouldn't change the truth, and that I no longer wanted any contact with her. Then I blocked her email. Of course, she made another account just to reach out again, and I blocked that one too. I'll keep blocking them all if I have to. For once, I'm not reacting out of anger or hurt, just clarity. I've finally accepted that my mother isn't capable of remorse. She doesn't feel guilt or shame or empathy, only entitlement. Oddly enough, I feel lighter now. I think I needed that final confrontation to realize that there's no redemption coming. I let her into my home that day because some part of me still hoped she'd change, that she wanted to make peace. But all she wanted was control. That illusion is gone for good now. Second update. Today, my mother did something I never could have imagined. She showed up at my workplace. Thankfully, I wasn't there. I'd taken the day off because I wasn't feeling well, and honestly, I think luck was on my side. According to the receptionist, she arrived unannounced and refused to leave. When they called me, my heart sank. They put her on the phone, and I could hear the agitation in her voice. She wanted to see me. I told her firmly that I was at home and wouldn't be coming in, and that if she caused any sort of scene, I would take legal action. I reminded her that she couldn't afford a lawsuit right now, and that if she kept pushing, my employer wouldn't hesitate to take their own action, which would be far worse for her. That seemed to scare her enough to back down. She left after that, or at least I didn't hear anything more. But the whole incident shook me. The idea that she'd cross into my professional life, the one part of my world she had nothing to do with, made me realize just how unstable things had become. After that, I decided I needed to speak with a lawyer. I didn't know if what she'd done was enough to justify a restraining order, but I wanted to be prepared. I couldn't risk her showing up again. Not at work, not at home, not anywhere. Third update. A few days later, I got my answer, and the situation went from bad to terrifying. When I came home from work one evening, she was standing outside my apartment building waiting for me. The moment she saw me, she started shouting. I told her calmly that I didn't want to argue and that if she didn't leave, I would call the police. But before I could even finish dialing, she lunged at me. She shoved me hard enough to knock me to the ground, my phone flying from my hand. She started screaming, blaming me for everything wrong in her life, for her failures, her marriage, her misery. For a second, I froze. I couldn't believe what was happening. Then instinct kicked in. I pushed her off and restrained her while she continued yelling and cursing. The commotion drew the attention of my neighbors, who came running and called the police. They helped hold her back until officers arrived. I pressed charges right there on the spot. My attorney has since helped me file for a restraining order, which should be processed soon. From what I've heard, Harry has taken the twins and moved in with his parents. Apparently, he confronted her after the incident, and things got so bad between them that he finally left. She's unraveling, emotionally, mentally, completely. I don't take joy in any of this, but I can't feel sorry for her either. She made her choices, she created the distance, she destroyed the relationships, and she's the only one to blame for the isolation she's now facing. Even my grandparents have told me they no longer want to see her after she lashed out at them for defending me. It's sad, really, how far someone can fall when they can't accept responsibility for their own actions. But as much as it hurts to admit it, she's no longer my problem. I'm focusing on protecting myself and moving forward. I've already started looking for a new home, somewhere larger, quieter, and far away from the chaos she keeps trying to drag me into. I'll have the restraining order finalized soon, and with that, I can finally close this chapter of my life. I used to feel embarrassed by my past, by the way she treated me. Now I see it for what it was, a lesson in resilience. She can blame me all she wants, but the truth is simple. She lost everyone because of who she chose to be. I just hope she finds the help she clearly needs. Because as for me, I'm finally free.